Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nintendo Week for the Endo Week of February 25th through March 3rd. I'm your host, Colin McIsaac, and as always, I'm joined by Alex Playett.
Hey.
And Ben Lamoreau.
Yeah, you just can't get rid of me.
So we had an ungodly amount of news this week, between Nintendo's investor Q&A at the beginning of the week and a mountain of other news afterwards. So we're here to give you the best rundown possible of all this new information. And after the break, we're going to talk about Nintendo's smartphone plans. They've said many times in the past they're going to try to figure out how to use smartphones to promote their business, so we're going to ponder exactly what that might look like. So guys, let's jump in. To start off the week, Iwata said that discounts and TV commercials don't affect game sales, and no matter how much he please, nobody understands. So Iwata essentially says that these practices no longer work, and that Nintendo needs to find more effective ways to promote their games. And he may be right that there are more effective ways, but that certainly doesn't mean that commercials and discounts aren't effective. And so I think Ben can lay down some slick knowledge, on what exactly this says about Nintendo.
Well, first of all, Colin, I'd like to request that you never talk like that again, because that was just embarrassing for you.
Never. That's my dialect, Ben.
Yeah, this story was a bit of a head-scratcher for me. I disagree with the idea that discounts aren't going to help game sales, or console sales either. We've seen it be effective in the past, with 3DS launching at $250, and then it got that big price cut because it wasn't selling at all, but it dropped to $170 and suddenly it was selling like hotcakes. And that kind of price cut might not be effective this late in the life of 3DS, but what I find more interesting is his second point, that TV commercials don't really help either. And I can see him saying, his big thing is that he thinks that communicating the value of a product is the most important thing, and that you can't communicate value properly with a TV commercial because it's, 30 seconds to show off all the cool games that are coming to 3DS, or 30 seconds to show off what you can do with the Wii U gamepad. And his idea is that they're replacing that with Nintendo Direct. And I agree that Nintendo Direct conveys a lot more information and in more exciting ways because you've got, 30, 40, 45 minutes to show off all the cool new upcoming games you have. But I don't think you can say that it replaces TV commercials or even comes close to it. Because with TV commercials, if you air a TV spot during a popular show, then maybe you've got 5-10 million people seeing that commercial. But if you air Nintendo Direct, they get maybe 100,000 views on YouTube and Twitch combined. And the kind of people that are watching Nintendo Directs are mostly people that either already have a 3DS and a Wii U and are looking to see what cool games are coming out for it, or people that were already pretty much sure they wanted to buy one eventually, but they're just, waiting for that killer game to come out that makes it a must-have system. I don't think you're going to draw in any new fans with a Nintendo Direct that aren't people that were probably already going to buy it anyway. So I think Nintendo Directs are a great way to communicate the value of Nintendo's products, but I don't think they're a good way to get new customers, which means they're not a replacement at all for TV commercials. They're just something nice to have alongside TV commercials.
Absolutely. And may I say, as a former kid, yes, TV commercials work. They just do.
I think they might be looking at the success of games like Minecraft, which aren't heavily advertised in the traditional way, but still spread through word of mouth. But I think their mistake is looking at a game like Minecraft and thinking that's something that will work for every game,
right,
when that's not necessarily true. They still need to have traditional marketing activities for those games that aren't these prolific, spread quickly through word of mouth sorts of games like Wii Sports was last gen.
So Iwata believes that the new Nintendo 3DS will help cushion the system's declining sales numbers. We've talked on this show in the past about how the new Nintendo 3DS really seems to be designed around convincing 3DS owners to rebuy 3DS hardware rather than attracting new customers to the 3DS family of systems. And I don't know about you guys, but I think that this story definitely affirms our suspicion, because the language he's using here really emphasizes sales numbers, whereas if they were trying to expand the audience, then yes, I think it would still mean sales numbers, but I think he would be framing it around the growth of the 3DS family of systems, reaching new customers, rather than simply the numbers of their sales.
Yeah, they're not really talking about expanding the audience in the same way they used to. It did come up once in the investor Q&A. One of the investors asked about it. And Iwata's response was something like, oh yeah, we couldn't demonstrate any difference to consumers as long as we were repeating DS and Wii approaches. So I guess their idea is if they make something that's similar to what they've already done, like new 3DS is pretty similar to old 3DS, just with some better versions of the old features, that they're not expanding the audience that way. So it really does sound like that's not their intention with new 3DS.
Yeah, I like that you use the word cushion the sales as opposed to like improve them or help spark interest in the system, because specifically the investor asked that in regards to the trend that typically a handheld peaks at around year 3 or 4 and then kind of slows after that. But 3DS peaked in sales in year 2. Its year 3 sales were lower than year 2. Its year 4 sales so far have been lower than year 3. So I don't think this is a case of reigniting a console or preventing this console from hitting that wall and slowing down like they often do at this point in the slide. I think it's exactly what you said. It's cushioning the sales numbers. It's getting people to upgrade and make the numbers look a little better, turn a profit, but it's not really expanding the audience.
He also says that Nintendo waited until 2015 to launch the new Nintendo 3DS in America and Europe in order to avoid stock shortages. As frustrating as supply shortages were in 2015 for both the Majora's Mask Edition and the regular models, I think it's fair to say that they made the right choice, especially considering last year they were dealing with a lot of negative PR about shortages of both Amiibo and the GameCube controller adapter, you might remember. And adding a new 3DS into that frenzy would have really inflated the heat that they were taking at the tail end of last year.
Yeah, if we already experienced shortages with them waiting until February to launch it, I think it just would have been a nightmare if they had tried to put that thing on shelves by Christmas.
Well, especially since it's actual gaming hardware. It's not an accessory. It's not a toy. It's a core product for them.
So, Nintendo wants to redefine entertainment with their upcoming plans for what they call quality-of-life devices, in the same way that they redefined the video game market with Wii and Nintendo DS. So if you're unfamiliar with these quality-of-life plans, or QOL, Nintendo hasn't announced a whole lot of specifics just yet, but they're trying to use their knowledge in making fantastic, engaging video games to make engaging systems for improving people's quality of life. So the first of these QOL devices that they have in the making is based on encouraging people to live a healthy lifestyle. Iwata says that many people try to maintain good diet and exercise habits, but because it's not engaging enough and results are too incremental to really notice your health improve, that people ultimately give up. I'm guilty. So Nintendo hopes to use their expertise in making games to build something that better incentivizes people to get in shape and stay healthy. I'm not too fond of using the word gamify, but it is literally what they're doing. They're trying to gamify health so that more people are encouraged to live healthy lives.
Right, and in his discussion about this with investors, he pointed out how Nintendo's gotten pretty good at making games in a way where you don't need a complicated, long manual to know how to play, and they would use the same kind of idea for their health devices or other quality-of-life devices where they're simple and easy to use, you can just jump right in, and then also you're encouraged to keep playing the games because they reward you, or in this case you'd be encouraged to keep doing your exercise because there's going to be sort of game-like rewards for it, so that you'll be hooked and invested in it instead of just doing it for, an exercise routine.
Right, and Nintendo also promises that in light of this, video games will still continue to be their first priority, despite, venturing into these other forms of entertainment. Because, in addition to all this QOL stuff, they launched Amiibo figures, they're going to be licensing their IP to other companies, so they really are branching out from just games. They recently, in fact, said that they are an entertainment company, not a video game company. But still, Iwata stresses that Nintendo is a video game creator above all else. He says their priority is the video game business, and they're going to work on better communicating the high quality of the games that they're making. So we also got an interview from GameSpot this week with the team behind Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, which is a game that we haven't really talked about a lot on this show. So Kirby and the Rainbow Curse is kind of a follow-up to Kirby's Canvas Curse, which came out for Nintendo DS in 2005. In Canvas Curse, Kirby was rolled into a ball and players would draw lines to guide him through various stages, and Rainbow Curse revisits that idea with some key new twists. So the most important difference between the games, they explain, is that the Wii U's processors and the large touchscreen on the gamepad allows for much faster gameplay than the Nintendo DS one did. And as a result, the Rainbow Curse is centered around the quick rolling of the ball from one place to another. And because of this faster gameplay, they decided not to include Kirby's famous copy abilities, and really just doubled down on what makes Rainbow Curse unique. Whereas Canvas Curse did have copy abilities and some puzzle-solving elements with those abilities as an integral part of the gameplay. They also talk about the way that they use clay as the game's central aesthetic. Nintendo's no stranger to unique art styles. We've seen them tinker with making their characters out of different materials. We've seen Paper Mario and Kirby's Epic Yarn, where everything is made of a distinct material. But in these games, often that material serves as a mechanic in addition to simply a visual style. So in Kirby's Epic Yarn, you'd unzip things, you would pop in and out of felt, But the clay in Kirby and the Rainbow Curse is really only used as an aesthetic to complement the game. They decided to use clay because Kirby's squishy, he's soft, and, clay is a material that lent itself well to Kirby's transformations. The clay can simply reshape itself, and because it's clay, his transforming wouldn't really break our immersion in the game's world. Xenoblade Chronicles X is going to have an immersive time flow system. The game will change from day to night with 6 different phases for times passing. Early morning, afternoon, evening, night, and late night with Jimmy Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon should be a
bad
playable
at
character
jokes.
in that game. I'm really feeling it.
I'm going to create Jimmy Fallon as my character.
The time of day will affect what you can do in the game's world. So just as a quick example, there are more monsters out at night than there are in the daylight. There's also a weather system which features different kinds of weather and different environmental conditions, like heat waves and sandstorms, that will affect how you play. You can check out some more footage of the day and night cycle at gamnesia.com. If you're tuning into this podcast right there from the website's page, you can check down in the list of stories below to find the video. If you're watching on YouTube, you can click the link in the description that says read more on this week's stories. And if you're listening on iTunes, then there is no link, but thank you. We love you the most. They've also revealed 2 new characters whom fans speculate may be new party members, and the first chapter of a short story based on the game. The short story makes several references to Homs, which is the race of Shulk and friends in the original Xenoblade Chronicles. I admit I haven't played the original game, so I don't understand the significance of those references, but fans now are speculating that Chronicles X may be tied to the original in story and not just in spirit. So Alex, you're our resident Xenoblade fan. Do you have anything to say?
So, about Homs. Homs is basically just the Xenoblade word for humans. So I wouldn't say that that's strong evidence to suggest that there's an actual story connection. Then again, I haven't read the whole story. I tend to not read the sort of fan translation stuff. So if there's ever an official translation, I'll scour the heck out of that and tell you what I think. But that's basically the equivalent of Final Fantasy games having moobles or chocobos. It doesn't mean there's an actual story connection.
You're telling me Final Fantasy VII wasn't related to Final Fantasy II?
Yeah, I hate to shatter your dreams, but
I thought Cloud was Palom and Porum's son.
You don't know anything.
Yeah, there's no
I'm
Final
obviously
Fantasy
kidding, Dan. That'd be really horrifying
Yeah.
if Palom and Porum had a son together.
Anyway, so the day-night cycle stuff is kind of familiar. They had similar times of day in the last Xenoblade, with different monsters appearing at night, sometimes tougher, sometimes prettier, like little firefly thingies. And you had NPCs who had schedules in Xenoblade as well, and that's probably going to be back as well. Weather systems also existed in the previous game, but they didn't really impact battles. It sounds like this time specific weather conditions, and specifically region-specific weather conditions, will have a big impact on the battle balance.
Nice.
So you might run into a scenario where you wouldn't want to attack an enemy when it's raining, but when it's dry, the enemy might be weaker.
That's a really cool kind of dynamism.
Yeah, especially given the diversity in the areas, and so they can all have very different types of weather.
Yeah, I'm pumped for this game, even though I know I will only be able to spend like 5 hours on it and then give up just because it's just so big.
No, so you'll get through the story intro, maybe.
Yeah, pretty much.
One more thing that you might notice in the latest footage that we haven't really seen too closely in the previous footage, but it's clear that, like in the previous game, you'll also have lots of different gear to choose from, and it'll all drastically affect your character's appearance.
Cool.
So, different shoes, different pants, different shirts, and it'll probably all show up in cutscenes, just like in the previous game, too.
So Tantalus Media, the company that brought Mass Effect 3 and Deus Ex Human Revolution to Wii U, is porting another game over, and it will be announced soon. Tantalus says that it will be released later this year, and it's their biggest project yet. So you know what that means. Half-Life 3.
I do remember a few years back when Wii U was all new and shiny, Reggie Fils-Aimé said that he was interested in bringing Grand Theft Auto 5 to the platform.
Ooh.
I don't know if that's, still something that could be in the works now or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was actually thinking about, what games this could possibly mean. And I was thinking, what are the games that they could qualify as their biggest project, bigger than, like, something like Mass Effect 3? And the only things that really came to mind as, like, bigger than Mass Effect, I thought maybe they're doing, like, Portal 2 or something. But the only things that I could think of that were bigger than Mass Effect are GTA 5 and Destiny. And I doubt that Destiny would work on Wii U's online infrastructure.
Well, I think we're missing the elephant in the room, and that's Minecraft.
No, because Notch literally laughed at.
Yes,
you
but
may
that's
be,
Notch
Notch.
isn't with the company anymore.
Notch is out of the
that's
picture
true,
at
but
this
now
point.
that it's bought by Microsoft, I don't know. You may be right. I've kind of discounted any hope.
And I say that because it would be something that'd be easy to exploit on a Nintendo
Yes.
platform, just
Oh,
because of
absolutely.
the depth and breadth of their IP.
Absolutely.
My big question is, if it is Grand Theft Auto 5, which will release first, the Wii U version or the PC version?
So Tantalus is also, however, porting a game from Wii U to PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. So the most likely candidate in my eyes is Zombie U, because it's one of like 3 Wii U games that isn't already on other consoles, and isn't published by Nintendo, of course. And when the other options are Lego City and Rabbids Land, Zombie U, to me, really makes the most sense for multi-platform audiences. And whatever it may be, though, that port is also coming out later this year.
If they didn't have such a strong track record of bringing Western games to Wii U and then probably porting them off of it now too, as opposed to Japanese games, I might think it was Monster Hunter or something like that, since I know Capcom probably wants to expand their revenue stream for that series.
You mean Monster Hunter isn't doing well in the West?
We've had this conversation before. Yeah, Capcom... and Capcom's in this kind of port to everything sort of mood lately if it's not PlayStation 4 exclusive. Mm-hmm. So,
well, yeah, it's basically free money for them if some other company ports their game to PS4 and Xbox One and PC. Mm-hmm. So
pretty close to free money, yeah.
Yeah. So a new study released has shown the top 5 reasons why people own which consoles. According to the study, gamers own the PlayStation 4 for higher resolution and the Blu-ray player. They own the Xbox One for its brand. And they own the Wii U for its fun factor. It's better for kids, it's cheaper than its competitors, it's backwards compatible, and of course, it's unbeatable exclusive first-party software. So another part of the study also showed which last-gen consoles owners of current-gen consoles came from. So you can check that out at Gamnesia.com if you'd like to know more. But a fun fact from that study, actually, more PS4 owners owned a Wii than owned a PS3. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
I think that probably speaks more to the number of people who replaced their PS3 over the years, thus inflating the PS3 install base, whereas I don't think we had that many replacements. I think
more people owned a Wii.
Exactly. I think it really was more, not just more people owned a Wii, but more people bought multiple PS3s. So the disparity between the two is even bigger than it appears just from the sales numbers.
So Hyrule Warriors is getting one final pack of DLC later this month called the Boss Pack. The Boss Pack launches on March 12th in North America for just $2.99, or for free if you already bought the Season Pass. The Boss Pack's main attraction is a boss rush mode, where you fight several bosses on the battlefield at once. We'll talk about that in a second, because the much more appealing thing is a new mode called Ganon's Fury, in which you play as the Mega Beast Ganon and just tear the enemies to shreds. He's big enough to smack around colossal monsters like Manhandla and King Dodongo. Like they're just his little playthings. He looks kind of like a cat playing with a ball of yarn.
So what you're saying is Manhandla gets manhandled.
Gan-handled.
Ganon-handled.
Gan-handled.
Ganon-handled. I love it.
So this mode is, it's really the ultimate Hyrule power fantasy. But it's not all, because if you get an A rank on the 3rd level of Ganon's Fury, you'll unlock a new challenge called Cucko's Fury. And yes, it lets you play Hyrule Warriors as a massive Cucko.
Game of the year.
What if they make Captain Toad too?
Obviously, that trumps all other
Toad
games.
in Hyrule Warriors. Oh, I thought you meant as a...
No.
Captain
Toad's
Fury.
Fury.
Sequel.
Adventure time is over.
So, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, which just launched a few weeks ago for Nintendo 3DS, it will be getting free DLC packs every single month. The DLC will release the first Friday of every month, and you can get the first pack on March 6th, which is just a few short days away. The first pack contains various Zelda-themed items, including a set of armor made to look just like Link himself. So this is a really nice, substantial offering from Capcom that promises a lot of support for the game down the line. I'm inclined to believe it's a part of an effort to better popularize Monster Hunter in the West, because it's historically sold very poorly compared to its outstanding success in Japan. And I think it could do a lot of positive work for the series, so long as it gets the right publicity. The right word of mouth and the right people talking and sharing news that this game is such a good experience and such a well-supported, consumer-friendly model.
Right, this is this is kind of rare to see Capcom do something like this because they kind of have that negative reputation in the gamer community for milking DLC and things like that. And also, just with a game that has such an online focus like this, if you can keep releasing DLC, and especially free DLC, then people aren't, playing the game for a few weeks and trading it in. They're keeping it for several months to come, which, like you said, helps with the word of mouth, because there's more people playing it at one time and telling their friends about it and encouraging their friends to pick it up so that they can join in on the hunts.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you talked about Capcom's bad reputation, because I was doing some digging on this since I know this DLC already released in Japan. And it turns out that the Japan version of the DLC was like a 7-Eleven exclusive. So free DLC, definitely better than 7-Eleven exclusive. And that makes sense in Japan, actually. You shouldn't laugh that much. They love their 7-Eleven.
Is that like the equivalent of Slurpees? In America, 7-Eleven gets exclusive rights to Slurpees. In Japan, they get exclusive rights to Monster Hunter DLC.
I guess you could look at it that way.
I'm going to look at it that way.
Buy Monster Hunter, get a Slurpee.
So an exploit was discovered in all Pokemon games for Nintendo 3DS that lets you hack any Pokemon you want into the game without using external programs. It works with all Gen 6 titles, meaning X, Y, Omega Ruby, and Alpha Sapphire. The catch is the exploit only works on the original models of 3DS, so new Nintendo 3DS owners cannot participate. Essentially, the exploit involves clearing a slot in your PC and then scanning a QR code through the 3DS camera for whichever Pokemon you'd like to add. So you can visit Gamnesia.com if you'd like to learn all the specifics about the exploit and learn how to do it yourself. The existence of tricks like this is always controversial, so I personally think it's a great discovery. I know I, for one, am not going to go to a Toys R Us in, like, Idaho Falls just to get an Arceus. So for me, I'm all for using this thing to make life a little easier and a little less Idaho-y.
I'm a little sad that the exploit isn't something like the old Missing Now glitches where you just kind of surf in a random place. Because those kinds of things in the original games were legendary, and this just seems so much less legendary.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are going to be upset by this just because, then they put all their hard work into, catching rare Pokemon, or they travel again or whatever, and then they see someone else just like, oh, look, I completed my full Pokedex by scanning a few things, They're gonna feel like they've kind of been cheated out of their experience.
I mean, it's like the new version of the Warp Zone, except for it obviously wasn't intentional. You could beat Mario without the Warp Zone and you get the street cred, but if you just want to get to the end, you can. I mean, who's to fault you for that?
Right. I'm not necessarily saying I'm opposed to it. I think if you find something cool like that in your game, it's fine. I just know that I think a lot of people are going to be upset about it.
Right.
All the purists, yeah.
Yeah.
So a new 3DS firmware update came out, and it disables the software hack that disables your 3DS region lock. So if you've been enjoying region-free gaming on your 3DS thanks to this software hack, don't upgrade your firmware unless you're willing to make that sacrifice. And Ben, you said you heard that this firmware update also disables that Pokemon exploit that we were just talking about?
Yeah, so I haven't enabled any of these hacks on my 3DS, but I've heard reports from other people that have, that this new firmware update will also get rid of the Pokemon exploit. So I can't say that I'm 100% certain about that, but that's just what I've been hearing from people that have, toyed around with their 3DS a little bit.
Okay, yeah, I am not planning on updating my firmware for my older 3DS model, so not going to confirm it here.
Free Pokemon for Colin?
Free Pokemon for me.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to Idaho. Nintendo finally explained why it takes so long to restock Amiibo. Certain figures are made by hand. Why? Why are they not all mass-produced? To be fair to Nintendo, they did say that only some figures are handmade, so we don't know if that means, like, certain characters are handmade, like all Villager Amiibo are made by hand, or if it's just a certain percentage of Amiibo, regardless of the character. Why do they do this?
I'm also wondering, are any of the defective Amiibos or the ones where they've got, 3 arms or they're missing a head? I wonder how many of those were handmade. Because, man, they have really got to work on their production.
I wonder if those are the handmade ones, and it's just all a conspiracy. We're sorry, we need to delay the restocks because we're busy making
impossible
Amiibo.
Or some worker decided they weren't getting paid enough. Oh, your Martha's gonna have 3 noses.
On the bright side, they did announce that they will be restocking Villager, Little Mac, and Captain Falcon in Japan this May, so hopefully they'll be restocking them worldwide as well. And finally, Yacht Club Games has announced a huge expansion pack of free DLC for Shovel Knight, the popular indie game that proves some things just don't have haters. This DLC is a whole new story mode quest where you play as Plague Knight. He has all new weapons and techniques, and it even introduces a crafting system for players to test their alchemy skills and create their own weapons for Plague Knight. So this is a really huge expansion that can really be considered its own game. So its whopping price of $0 is really something special. If you'd like to learn more, you can check it out at gamnesia.com.
I will find a Shovel Knight hater just for you, Colin.
And always, to conclude the news segment of this week's show, we're bringing you a lightning round with little nuggets of information. So, some upcoming dates to look out for. On March 6th, Japan is getting a stream of Xenoblade Chronicles X that focuses on the game's battle system. That's this Friday, so be on the lookout at gamnesia.com for more information. On March 14th, Playtonic Games will officially unveil Project Yooka-Laylee. For those unfamiliar, Playtonic is a new indie studio composed entirely of former Rareware staff, and Project Yooka-Laylee is their official spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie. On March 20th, you can get the Gold Mario amiibo from Walmart. Nintendo has finally confirmed that it exists. It will be available for $12.99 in stores at only 3,000 stores across the country. March 20th is also the day that the Mario Party 10 line of amiibo launch, as well as the game Mario Party 10. Late April is when the Marth amiibo will be returning to stores, so mark it on your calendars and make sure you get one.
Aren't you forgetting something, Colin?
What?
Codename Steam.
Oh.
It's also on the way this month.
March 13th. March 13th. All right, Codename Steam. So we've also got quite a few interesting facts for you. A lot, actually, this week. A lot happened this week. So a new adapter lets you use just about any USB-compatible controller on Wii and Wii U. So that includes DualShock 3, 4, I believe it includes, like, the USB Xbox 360 controllers, and also just any sort of third-party USB controller, like SNES reproduction controllers. Nintendo is shipping the Smash Bros. 3DS and Wii U soundtracks to Club Nintendo members who registered for the product. I got mine in the mail the other day, and it is super pretty. The creator of Devil's Third, the upcoming Wii U exclusive, recommends that players use a Pro Controller instead of the gamepad. So if you're planning on getting Devil's Third, consider buying a Pro Controller. Nintendo is one of many publishers attending Gamescom this year. There's no surprise there, but it is good to have confirmation. Nintendo explained how their internal teams are organized, so if you'd like to read up on it, you can head over to gamnesia.com, and also let us know if you'd like us to break down this kind of thing for you in the podcast in the future, and really analyze it in depth, because if you want to hear it, it could be really interesting. If you don't, it's no big loss. GameStop Italy is restocking the Majora's Mask Edition new Nintendo 3DS XL on March 27th. No word on other countries, but hopefully it will be back in stock soon. Pokémon Shuffle, Nintendo's free-to-play Pokémon puzzle game on the Nintendo 3DS eShop, has hit 1 million downloads, which is mighty impressive.
Should have said Mighty Anna.
Nintendo announced some time ago plans to make a web browser-based eShop, and that program just launched in Japan. Currently, you can only buy the Mario Kart 8 DLC, but more content will likely come soon. No word on when this is coming worldwide. And some really big news came from Sega. We're not going to go too in-depth here because it is a Nintendo podcast, but Sega is facing massive downsizing and restructuring the company to focus on mobile gaming and online PC gaming. So they're really cutting way back on console games. And they did make a point, though, to say that they will keep making Sonic games for home consoles, and, it's a very safe bet that that includes Wii U. And finally, some new videos came out this week, which you can find at gamnesia.com. We've got a trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, a TV commercial for Mario Party 10, and a launch trailer for Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. Oddly, Capcom released that about 11 days late, but nonetheless, it is here.
Colin.
What's up?
There's another video.
What?
So Game Explain released the opening cutscene of Codename Steam.
Codename Steam?
Codename Steam.
Hashtag Colin's fault.
Colin!
Hey. I can't think of a joke here.
I'm really steamed about this whole thing.
Oh my god.
Abe's gonna emancipate your All right.
So, thus ends the news recap. Boy, that was a lot of news. But stay tuned, because after the break, we will be talking about Nintendo's plans for integrating smartphones into their main line of business. Do we think they'll make games, companion apps, or what? And what will these types of things look like? Stick around.